Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ted Gardner, and I'm an interviewer for the Library of Congress Oral History Project, of which our local public library is a sponsor here. Dennis Daly is our videographer and a member of the History Department staff of our Public Library of Cincinnati. We're very thankful to Dennis for his operation here. And we're fortunate enough to have an old friend of mine, and I'm honored to be able to interview Tom Anderson. Tom, welcome to the project, and you know you're going to get a DVD of this, and you'll be in the archives forever. How about that?
That's great.
You're history, man.
You're kidding. I'm history.
You sure are, as I. And on a wonderful spring day here in 2008, it's an honor and a privilege to be able to interview you. And where were you born, Tom?
I was born in East Price Hill, Cincinnati, Ohio, and 742 Hawthorne Avenue.
Date of your birth?
12/30. I hate to tell them, 24.
Oh boy, I've got you on that. Okay, tell us about your family.
Well, I had two brothers. One that went in the Marine Corps, the other was in Army G2 in Korea, and myself. And I have three sisters. My sister Ruth, the oldest. My sister Rose is a nun at Mount St. Joseph, Sisters of Charity, and my other sister is Betty, the youngest of the bunch. So we got
That's a great family.
Yeah.
A wonderful family. Where did you go to elementary school?
I went to Holy Family.
Where's that located?
It's located in the Irish Pocket in East Price Hill.
Okay.
It was an Irish parish. There were four Sullivan families there, and Kellys and O'Toole's, and you name them. They're all Flaherty's. They're all there.
Holy
Murphy's.
cow! A green.
A green belt.
Oh boy, I should say so. So you went through. Now, are you the oldest of the crowd? Or?
No. My sister Betty, sister Ruth, then my sister Rose, then my brother Frank, and then me.
Oh, I see.
And I was the dark-haired one between two redheaded brothers.
How about that?
With a redheaded mother. That's not a good
Oh my goodness sakes! Well, I'll bet you had some wonderful times as a family.
I'll tell you, it was in the old days, back in the Depression days. You know, in the 30s, we didn't have a whole lot of money, so our idea of a good time was a bonfire in the street, putting somebody's garbage can up on top of a telephone pole, and a fist fight over in Dempsey Park.
Yes, you learned to defend yourself very early.
Oh,
Did you play sports in school?
No, I played football in grade school. I wasn't big enough to play in high school. Later on, after I went to Elder High School, and after that didn't seem to be satisfactory, I went to a Central Vocational, and in the Central Vocational, I learned by going to the old Fenway Club, which was a boxing club.
Sure.
The manly art of self-defense, and it was really self-defense up at Central Vocational,
Right.
It was like a fish out of water there, but I did box for a while, and.
Is that the old club up on McGill?
No, this was down on in Commercial Square downtown.
Oh.
Right there near St. Xavier School.
Oh yes. Oh sure.
St. Xavier High School.
Sure, Sycamore Street.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that those were rich, wonderful times. I'm sure.
You didn't have a lot of money, but you had a lot of activity.
Absolutely, and it was a close-knit community too, wasn't it?
Very close. Everybody.
Supportive, self-supportive.
Particularly in Price Hill, which is in the western part of Hamilton County.
Right.
Everybody knew everybody. And it's that way today too.
Sure.
I mean, you want to meet somebody today, you go to Price Hill Chili or La Rosa's, and you'll meet somebody that you haven't seen for a while.
Right. And then especially Elder High School.
Especially Elder High School.
Holy cow, the Purple Panthers.
They bleed purple up there in
They
the,
sure
in the pit.
In the pit. In the pit, yes, and that's a great tradition as well. When you moved on into Elder, did you have activities, clubs, interests?
Well,
or anything like that?
I didn't last too long at Elder. I ended up with Central Vocational,
Okay.
and through Central Vocational,
Over here on the Parkway?
well, it was up on Iowa Street originally.
Oh, it was.
Yeah, up in Walnut Hills,
Oh, yes.
and so there I learned a lot about. Actually, started with aviation in high school, and then turned into Central Vocational, and I did get a job, co-op when I was in school with Fuller Ford as an airplane engine assembler for Lycoming engines and Piper
Really?
Cubs. Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Then later on, I got a job with Brighton Copper Works as a coppersmith apprentice.
Well, for heaven's sake.
Well, after I got blown up in the war, I came back and I got a job with Associated Insurance Companies as a junior underwriter. So you went from a coppersmith apprentice to a junior underwriter.
How about that?
And so I had many occupations.
Well, I should say that's really broadened your life in so many ways.
Well, you had to see once you can't do the things that you did before. You have to change your whole outlook on life and your whole your career.
Sure,
Career,
absolutely. Well, as you know, life-changing experiences, all of which are enriching, I hope.
Well, I think that the Army life is a it can be invigorating and it can be challenging.
Yes.
And it can also be a life changing experience.
Exactly.
And I suppose that in the Army I learned a lot of things that have benefited me later on in life.
Sure, absolutely. Discipline and so forth, and cooperation with so many different kinds
Right,
of
yeah,
people.
and
everything.
that's right. You learn diversity
Yeah.
and many other things.
That's right. I always like to ask a veteran, where were you on December the 7th, 1941? Do you remember?
I was laying on my couch in the dining room in my house over on 742 Hawthorne
How
Avenue,
about that?
East Price Hill.
You hear the news on the radio or
Heard
what?
the news on the radio.
How about that? Yeah. Now let's see, 1924. So you were 17 years old then.
17 years old.
And what did you think about it at that time?
Well, I sort of felt that it was a rather bold imposition on Americans to be bombed at Pearl Harbor.
Right.
And
Exactly.
not necessarily felt that it was personally my, but to the country I felt it was
Yes.
an insult. And so consequently I was a voluntary inductee on March the 24th, 1943. And this happened in 41.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't old enough until December of, my birthday is in December of 24, 30th of 24.
Okay.
So, and it
So
was
you were
once-
18 when
yeah.
you got to be 18 then, huh?
Well, yeah, and then my mother died when I was 17.
Oh.
And so I and then I had kind of I would say, not a stormy childhood, but stormy teenage years. And I just sort of, I guess, actually, at the request of my friend, Captain Patrick Hayes, the chief of detectives of Cincinnati, he said, I was starting to get into trouble. And he said, I think you ought to go in the Army before you end up in Columbus.
How about that?
And at that time, the state penitentiary was,
Sure. Pretty good advice, huh?
oh. And Captain Patrick Hayes was about 9 feet tall and 6 feet wide. And
Well, that of course is a wonderful foundation, and as we were talking earlier, you entered the Army when you were 18, and where did they first send you?
Well, I thought I was going to the Air Force, and my cousin, Chick Guilfoyle, who was in the recruiting station, he told me at the time, he says, "It's all set, you're going to the Air Force." I said, "Okay." I said, "You sure, Chick?" He said, "Yeah, I'm sure you're going to go to the Air Force." I said, "Okay." Well, when I got on a train and pulled myself out of the sand down in Camp Landing, Florida, and a guy come up to me with crossed muskets, I said, "I don't think I'm in the Air Force." I don't think I'm in the Air Force.
So how long were you there at Blanding?
We weren't there. I just went through basic training there, and then we shipped out to Camp Robinson, Arkansas, and that's when I went to Ranger School in Camp Robinson.
Oh, so you started right out in Rangers.
Well, it was my second camp.
after
Yeah,
boot camp.
shortly after that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I went to Blanding in March of '43, and I went through Ranger School in October of '43.
Okay.
And Ranger School was a very, very difficult operation. It was 7 weeks of sheer hell.
Right.
And if you would maybe start off with probably maybe 60 to 70 men, and you might end up maybe only 25 would make it. You know,
Very, very high rate of...
very high rate, and very, very difficult.
Yes.
Extremely difficult. It's a challenge of when you think you can't go on, you go on. You know?
Right. Well, yes, and of course not only the physical part of it, but the mental part.
Mental part, too.
And the determination that you had to have. And I'm sure the tough discipline that you got from superiors and so forth.
We had an exhibition between the Texas Christian and Arkansas football game of Rangers coming at each other with unsheathed bayonets. When it was all over, there was about 7 or 8 of them laying on the ground. There was
No kidding.
rifles with the bayonets stuck in the ground.
Oh,
These
my.
guys got hit with jaws with the butt of the rifles.
Oh my God.
Unbelievable. I don't think I've ever seen a Ranger display like that ever in my life.
Good heavens, that was really something.
Oh, it was, yeah.
Yeah.
Mess.
Well, so how long were you? How long was the Rangers discipline and training?
About 7 weeks.
About 7 weeks. Wow, that's a long time to
It is
put
a
up
long
with that
time.
kind of stuff.
And you, just to give you one little instance, you build a toggle rope bridge, and you make it out of rope and spindles, and you go hand in hand across it. In itself, it's very difficult.
Yes.
But then when it threw over a stream, and then when they threw percussion grenades into the water underneath you,
Blowing up around.
blowing up underneath you,
Wow. Good golly, I should say.
in hand-to-hand combat, and there's a lot of
Sure. So you had to learn hand-to-hand combat with your rifle with bayonet fixed and all that?
With a bear rifle sometimes. We had 7 guys drowned in the Arkansas River,
Good heavens.
1943.
Isn't that something? Well, so then your assignment after Ranger School, what happened?
Well, then we went to Camp Rucker, Alabama, the 66th Division, which I was assigned to. And from there, they sent me overseas as a replacement on the Queen Mary.
Uh-huh.
I was a sergeant of the guard on the Queen Mary, and on that particular ship, and that was in August of 1944. Winston Churchill, British Marines, Jamaican Wax, paratroopers, and the replacement army. Mm-hmm. And I had the duty, even though I was a corporal, I was sergeant of the guard, and I had to pull paratroopers off the rigging and that, and
Really?
but my big thrill on that ship was we had orders that nobody, because we didn't have a convoy. Queen Mary sailed without a convoy.
Fast.
And so when we had orders that nobody was to come on the top deck. Well, I come on the top deck, and there's a few people up there, including 2 generals. And the guy says, "Well, I'm General Anderson." He said, "And this is General Brown." I said, yes, sir. I said, glad to meet you, sir. I said, my name is Tom Anderson, and you and General Brown have to go below.
Boy, oh boy.
That was a thrill.
Yes, sir. And by that time, you were all of 19 years old, huh?
Yeah, I was. Let's see, I was just 19. I was 19 and yeah, in the Battle of the Bulge, I was 19.
Right.
Yeah.
Just imagine. Gosh. Okay. How long was that crossing on the Queen Mary?
It took, I think, around 6 days, 5 or 6 days.
Yeah.
We landed. I think we hit the Azores in about 6 days, and then we went on to England. You know.
And she went unescorted.
Unescorted.
Absolutely. Lone ship.
And Winston Churchill was on it.
She was on board when
He was on board.
Winston, he was on board when you were.
Yeah.
Did you ever get to see him?
No, but we heard some little flack because some of my guys got a little ambitious, and they locked in the British ships. They don't have a captain. They have what they call a master, and they blocked the master out of his cabin. Well, you think there wasn't hell to pay on that?
Oh my gosh, those darn Yanks, huh?
And
oh my gosh.
so finally, you know, the word came down: don't mess with the ship's personnel. It's okay.
Now, were you sergeant of the guard all the way across?
Yeah, all the way across. Yeah.
Oh my golly. Well, that kept you pretty sober, didn't it?
Yeah, yeah. It
Kept you out of trouble.
It was a challenge, I'll tell you.
I'm sure it was.
Because I was only a corporal. I wasn't even a sergeant. You know, but I was called sergeant of the guard.
That is amazing. Well, obviously you exhibited leadership qualities, and that was a great tribute to you. What were the accommodations like on that ship?
You know, later on I went down to Long Beach, California to see the Queen Mary. It's in dock, by the way,
Yes.
down there. I couldn't believe how small the rooms were. I mean, when I went over, I don't remember them being that small.
Right.
But I said, there wasn't room for hardly anything, you know.
How about that?
And we were stacked in there, you know.
Right. Well, that must have been quite something. Of course, I'm sure that there were personnel aboard the ship that were on watch, submarine alert, so to speak, might be watching.
I would suppose, yeah.
For the enemy?
We didn't have that. We didn't have the armed personnel on the ship. We were just backseas trying to regulate some of the passenger passengers. And with Jamaican wax and Army guys, I mean, it was a real trip,
God.
you know.
What a combination. Okay, so where did you disembark?
We disembarked at Southampton.
Southampton, England.
And then from there later on, we stayed. We were training in England for another month, and then finally we crossed the Channel on a British ship and landed at Le Havre.
Okay.
France.
Right. Did you experience rough seas or anything like that? No.
I was too busy to think about that.
Before going over to Le Havre, did you spend any time in England?
Yeah, we spent some time. We said I'm trying to think of the name of Warminster Barracks.
Warminster Barracks.
And we trained in there. And then we went overseas as a replacements, landed at Le Havre, and then got on trucks into Belgium.
Okay.
Now, on our way up,
you were still with the 66th then? Or
no, we were replacements to the 84th Division.
The 84th Regiment.
That's the 84th Division.
84th Division.
That's a rail splitter division. That's a white log with
the Lincoln. Yeah, right.
And I spent the 84th Division, and on the way up, we had something like 12 trucks, and a couple of them got blown up on the way up.
My goodness.
And before they even got to the front.
Now, that was blown up from aircraft?
No, it was blown up from V-bomb.
V-bombs. Oh, that was a terrible thing, wasn't it? Good heavens.
And
describe did you hear them coming?
You hear them coming, they go, brr, 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 and then they stop. And when they stop, everybody runs for cover because that means that the motor's shut off and they're coming down.
Coming down.
So whenever you hear a V-bomb coming over and the motor stops, you know it's coming down.
Right, right. Yes, I've heard about that and read about it too. And
I've seen buildings where the whole front end of the buildings, you could see people sitting in there with their chairs and living room, and the whole front of the building was gone. You know?
Good heavens! Oh my gosh!
Yeah, that's up in Belgium.
Yeah, that was a terrible, terrible thing, and I know.
I spent most of my time in Belgium.
I see.
With the 84th Division in the Battle of the Bulge.
Right.
I went up there in like September, and my first trip back to the hospital in Paris was January the 1st. So I spent Christmas, all through Christmas, in Belgium in the Battle of the Bulge. So.
Now this is in 1944.
1944.
Okay. Describe what it was like in the wintertime there.
The most hellish time I've ever spent in my entire life. I got carbuckles. We had guys with trench foot, frostbite. It was about 5 to 10 below zero, snow on the ground, mud. We laid on the ground sometimes like 2-3 weeks at a time. No hot food. Maybe once every week you might get some hot food. It was just unbelievable physical weather conditions.
Just horrible.
Horrible, unbelievable. And a lot of guys, a lot of guys cracked up, and a lot of guys just got frostbite, and a lot of guys just.
What about your equipment? Did you have good boots?
No, we had the worst kind of boots in the entire made by mankind.
I've heard about that.
We had the smooth side on the outside, and the rough side. The rough side on the outside and the smooth side on the inside.
Good hell.
Instead of like your regular shoes are like rough on the inside, and it just soaked up the water.
Sure.
Guys, I never got trench foot. A medic gave me a carbide bag, and when I go to bed at night in a sleeping bag, I put that on my feet.
Right.
So my feet would stay, even though they were wet, they would stay warm all night.
Right.
And your socks, you have wet socks for like 2 weeks. No change of clothes, no shave, and he had those little knit caps that hurt your hair.
Right, right.
You take those hats off and take this knit, and just like porcupine.
Oh, yeah. Did you ever see Bill Malden?
Yeah.
The great cartoonist?
Yeah, up front with
Bill.
Bill, yeah.
Yeah. Willie and Joe.
Willie and Joe, yeah.
Two wonderful.
Yeah, that came in Stars and Stripes, which was.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And but there were a lot of guys that really had a really rough time. They really couldn't handle the weather. Maybe we were from the South.
Sure.
And we had a lot of people from North Carolina in our outfit, and we had some guys from New York. But basically, it was a situation where you really had to acclimate yourself, and you couldn't close your sleeping bag at night because if you did, you'd be dead in the morning, because the German guys that come through and they can speak English better than we can, and if you didn't have your gun right there handy, and with your sleeping bag open, you're a dead duck.
Now you were up against
12 we were in part of that where they had 12 Panzer divisions in that. I spent most of my time in St. Vith, Vith,
V-I-T-H, yeah.
It was on the southern flank, and the northern flank was Bastogne, and in between it was Malmedy and Huey and some of those other cities.
Sure.
And our job in the 84th Division was to cut the supply lines coming in from Aachen. Now Aachen was on the southern flank, and Aachen, that's where all the supplies for the Panzer Division were coming in. So the 84th Division had to cut that road so that, and that was 84th was a crack division.
You were right. I mean, you were right up against.
Oh yeah, that was.
And those were very highly seasoned veterans of the German
the
Army.
84th was a more veteran group than the 69th. 69th was right out of Van Dorn, and they were green,
Right, and
Now my job, yeah, with the 84th, well, my first mission as a Ranger, a B-17 got shot down on the German-Belgian border, right near St. Vith. But it was up in Germany still. And my job was to go up there and go through the plane, take out the maps, so that nobody knew where they were coming from and where they were going to.
Right.
There was one guy still in the plane, which was kind of, it was my first experience. I mean, it was very young, very early time that I was ever in there. And I had to go through all his clothes and take all the maps out. And then he was sitting reading the New Testament.
Really?
On his way down, yeah.
Is that so? And he was, oops.
I was a guy this big still in a B-17. You think little guys would be in that.
Well, now, as I understand it, you got to understand that I was Navy in the South Pacific.
Yeah.
So I was about as different from you as you can imagine. But in our Hornet group, of course, we have fellas that were in the ETO, in B-17s like Jack Keller and so forth and so on.
And what's the other guy too? What's his name? Bates? No.
No, I'll think of it in a minute.
Yeah, okay.
But the B-17 had a crew of 10.
Mm-hmm.
10, she was a big plane.
Yeah.
Now, when this plane came down, this was the only person in the plane.
That's right.
And he was dead.
He was dead.
The others
he was to the rear of the plane.
The others had bailed out?
The others had bailed out.
I'll be darned. And
I don't know whether he was dead before they bailed out or not. I don't know.
You don't know?
I just know he was just big and stiff.
Isn't that? Oh my goodness! What an experience! What?
That was my first experience.
Yeah.
See, as a Ranger, a lot of my experience was reconnaissance. Go to a town and find how many snipers there were.
Sure.
Just generally, always advance. In fact, I was listed at MIA for 2 weeks one time.
Were you really? Missing in action. My goodness sakes. Now tell us about...
I knew where I was, but they didn't know where I was.
I'm here.
I was up in the Ardennes,
In the Ardennes.
Yeah.
Tell us about your first wounding.
Well, actually, my first wounding wasn't exactly a wound, but it was kind of a weather wound. It was like... I had big boils breaking out over my body.
Really? From the cold?
From the cold and from the food.
Oh.
Because we didn't have any hot food. All we had was K rations.
Oh, yes.
And big boulders are coming out of my body.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. And I assume that's why I got my first Purple Heart.
And you were hospitalized for that?
Well, on January the 1st, I went back to Paris. Wait a minute. You think, this is great.
The city of light.
So I go back to Paris to the hospital. They put me in there for about 10 days. I never got out of the hospital.
Oh, for gosh sake.
I never got to see the Eiffel Tower or the Triumph. And then my outfit, in the meantime, the 84th Division moved up into Holland, up in the Netherlands. And so they reassigned me to the 69th Division.
Oh.
And the 69th Division was on its way to meet the Russians.
Now, this brings up a point, and I think people will appreciate the fact that you were in the 66th and then the 84th and now the 69th. And you had to wear a different patch every time on your uniform?
We didn't wear any patches.
No patches. No IDs.
No insignia.
No insignia. How about that? Well, that was one of the things that Bill Malden would show in his cartoons, I remember. Even a lieutenant or a captain that
put mud on his.
Yeah.
He put mud on the stripe.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Well, no, I joined the 69th Division, and the first thing they did was set up their command post in the middle of town. It just doesn't sound right to me, So, well, it lasted about 4 hours. And The 88th blew it to kingdom come. You know, it was gone.
Sure. Oh, that must have been terrible. Those big shells coming in over you. How about the tanks?
Well, the tanks, I never had so much trouble with tanks so much as I did with rockets and Stuka.
Oh,
Stuka bomber.
dive bombers.
Now, rockets, they shoot 12 rockets at a time. One that hit here, one that hit here, one that hit there, and so on. And so when the first one hit, you headed for the bunker. And by the way, I never dug a foxhole all the time I was in Europe.
Really?
Never fought a battle in the daytime.
My goodness.
Everything was at twilight, and we had the old German bunkers. They were beautiful bunkers that the Germans built. And once we took over there, we used those bunkers. And so when one rocket hit here, the next one here, then I'm heading for the bunker.
Sure.
You know? And one guy, he had a little large behind on him. He got stuck in the bunker that I was heading for.
Mm-hmm.
I had to boot him through.
Oh my gosh.
I hauled off and kicked him right through that thing, and I was right behind him.
You were right behind him, I should say. Well, the enemy assault, the enemy fire. You talk about the rockets and
Stukas.
and the Stuka bombs, the bombs. That must have been very,
Like clockwork. It's 6 o'clock, quarter to 6:30. Stuka bombers would come over in the Ardennes and hit this. You could hear the tree burst, boom, boom,
yes,
boom.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you had to trying to find cover, and there's no place to go, and you're trying to get out of the way. And so I had several experiences like that where the Stukas come over, you know, at that time of night, because that's usually the time maybe when we get a chance to eat something, you know,
Sure.
they have some hot food. Well, it was one time I got hot food, and I got a spaghetti in one hand, and I got coffee in the other. And I'm running like hell. And I trip over an old burned out vehicle, you know?
Uh-huh.
I did a double flip over. When I come up, I still had that spaghetti here, and I still had the coffee here.
You weren't.
That's the first hot meal I had in a week, and I wasn't.
You weren't about to lose
about
that.
to lose it. No. I don't know. You take my life, but not my food.
Oh my gosh! Oh golly! Well, now so there you were. You were moving through Saint Vite.
I went through St. Vite twice. I went once with the 84th Division. I came back the next time with the 69th Division. It was smoking both times. The first time I came through, it was really a very deadly sight. And there were guys hanging from poles. There were guys' bodies stacked on trucks. And then the second time I went through, it wasn't so bad as St. Vite, but further into the Ardennes, the 99th Division, checkerboard division, I seen them stacked up in, you know, piles of bodies, you know, just like maybe 5, 6 guys at one place, and Germans over here, and maybe some Americans over there. And
Oh, both sides.
both sides.
Oh my.
In the Ardennes.
Oh my goodness! What?
And that was, and of course that was last time was in January, pardon me, January of 45.
Now, what was your main weapon?
Actually, my main weapon was a carbine.
Carbine. Okay. All
But I was also, as you'll see something, I had several different MOSs. I was a squad leader, I was a gun crewman, and basically I was a demolition man.
Yes.
And so I had really a lot of different occupations, and then I was on reconnaissance.
Right. Now, as a demolition man, it was your duty to defuse mines and so
And
forth?
lay mines.
Tell us about that.
Well, 57 millimeter guns, which was our main weapon, could knock the track off of an M6, M5 tank, but it couldn't penetrate it.
I see.
So we'd knock the tracks off of it and then call in for tank destroyers with 90 millimeters to blow it up once we had it stationary. Because, pardon, German tanks can only go 180. where American tanks would go 360.
Oh. So the German, then they had to come back the other
once
way.
you got them from the back, they couldn't come around all the way around.
Aha.
But their armor plate was about that thick.
Oh my goodness, is that so? Huh. Now,
But the Sherman tanks were 360, and they were faster, but they weren't big.
no.
I mean, the German tanks were just so much bigger.
And much more heavily armored.
Heavily armored?
Oh, yeah.
Well, they had 88s, and which was a potent weapon. But again, with the 180 degrees,
Sure.
once you got behind them,
Yeah.
they couldn't turn around and get back to you.
How
know?
about that?
Especially if you had to knock the tracks off.
But they were frightening pieces
there's
of war.
I'll tell you, there's nothing like at 6 o'clock at night hearing the rumbling of a tank coming down the road. You know? And behind them's the infantry. Behind them is, I guess, some others. I don't know,
Right.
artillery.
Now, were you in the area of Malmedy where the Germans dressed in American uniforms and killed?
Actually, the situation in Malmedy, which was the Germans didn't dress in American uniform. What they did, however, was SSC. The tank crews were all SS. You know, they called there was the Wehrmacht, I don't know how you pronounce it, but anyway, they were the regular citizen soldiers. But the SS
Yes.
were basically in charge of the Panzer Division, which is basically tank division, and they're the ones that lined up 147 Americans and killed them in Malmedy.
Right.
And and Malmedy was in between Bastogne and where I was at St. Vith.
Right. Were you anywhere near Brigadier General McAuliffe?
No, that was the 101st Airborne, but that was at the other end. That was at Bastogne.
Oh, yes.
I was under General Hodge.
Courtney Hodge.
Yeah.
Sure.
That was in the First Army. That's when it was with the 69. And then I was under Simpson, and not Simpson, it was the 7th Army. I was in I can't think of the other general's name, but he was I was in the 9th Army and the First Army.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And the 9th Army was the 84th, and it was the First Army with the 69th.
How about that?
And anyway, so getting to the inevitable question, how come he got blown up?
Yes, but we need to know about that.
Well, I really don't know exactly what I did wrong, but it was we were coming into a town called Krinkhet, Germany, and I was again on reconnaissance, and we were disarming booby traps and looking for tank traps, and I did get a hold of this one booby trap. It wasn't a mine; it was a booby trap, and I tried to disarm it, and it was about 7 o'clock at night. I'd been on for days. I hadn't got hardly much sleep, and I was
rest.
beat up, and I pulled the wire. And I know when I pulled it, it was too hard, and by the time I was blown up, you know.
Oh, gee.
But I had disarmed them before, and they had no problems. And,
Well,
and there was it's sort of irony of it. There was a guy by the name of from Detroit that was with me. He said, "Well, I'll take this one, Tom." I said, "No, it's all I got it." You know, he said, "No, let me get it." I said, "No, I got it." You know, it could have been the other way.
Unfortunate.
You know? Never know. That's life.
Well, that's true, and in situations like that, it's you make a decision and you want to stick with it.
You know, I've never been knocked out. Even then, I wasn't knocked out.
You weren't.
And see, what a lot of people don't know when you get I suppose it's the same thing with these roadside bombs. You know.
Yes.
You don't get boom like that. You get sucked in and then blown out.
Oh, I see.
In other words, you get sucked into
The explosion, it's like a vacuum.
Yeah, it creates a vacuum.
Yeah.
And so when I reached down the back, I landed on my butt, up in the air and down. I looked down, and my hand was gone. It was like laying over.
Oh my goodness.
And it actually was blown off at the wrist. So it was blown over, and and it was way up in Germany, and I was well, it wasn't quite to the Rhine, but I was pretty close to the Rhine.
Right.
And so they threw me in a Jeep, sent me back to field hospital, put a tourniquet on me, threw me in another Jeep, took me back. Finally, I ended up back in Liège, Belgium.
Ah.
And I'll never forget it, because I was saying goodbye to the guys too when I left. You know, I was on a stretcher.
You were conscious all the time?
Yeah, I was conscious. I never been, as I say, I never been knocked out. Even in boxing, I never been knocked out. But they, pardon me, had my hand wrapped up, and they threw a little soft on it, and threw me in the truck.
Oh my goodness!
In those days we didn't have things like, mostly it was all I had was sulfur.
Sure, sure. Oh my goodness! Well, that was the rate of mortality rate or injured rate in your outfit very high?
It wasn't as high in our outfit as it was in the 99th, the 106th.
Okay.
We were next to the British 2nd and the Canadian 1st. But the ones who really took it on the chin was 106, Frank Bates. You remember?
Oh, yes.
Well, Frank Bates was in 106, and the 106 was almost wiped out. The 99th Checkerboard Division, when we relieved them in the Ardennes, when I came up with the 84th, with the 69th Division, they were laying everywhere. I don't know how many casualties they had, but they had a ton of them.
Good heavens.
And they had a lot of POWs in the 99th.
Now, did you experience, when you were in the Ardennes, the eventual clearing of the weather so that our planes could come over?
No.
You never did? You didn't see that?
I was in the hospital when all that happened.
That's right. You were in the hospital.
I was wounded on February the 19th, 1945.
How about that? My goodness sakes.
And,
so how long were you in the hospital?
Well, I stayed in Liège, and incidentally, while I was in the hospital in Liège, German bombers come over and blew out all the windows in the hospital I was in. So I'm laying there in the bed, and the glass is going zzz.
Oh my gosh! Did they?
So then I went to Chester, England.
Do you think the enemy knew that that was a hospital?
I don't think they cared.
They were desperate by that time.
I don't think they cared.
They didn't care.
I don't think, and it may be, that could have been a V-bomb too, that did that.
I see.
So they fired those V-bombs in the air and they had no control over them. I mean, they made.
Oh, once they were launched.
Once they were launched, they didn't know where they were going to go.
Yeah.
They could end up in somebody's house, or they could end up down they just, they were very indiscriminate as far as.
But you could hear that motor, that engine running that.
You went, when it stopped.
That was the time to hit the ground. Oh my goodness. Well,
German ingenuity is sort of funny. Like even a German machine gun, they had German machine guns, and they would go. Ours would go. It's a different sound.
Right.
Well, anyway, so and there was the 69th guys. They found a bunch of German machine guns, and they were, it was kind of a lull in the action. They were shooting with machine guns, and they got all of a sudden a shell come over, landed not too far from them.
Oh.
And they said, "Where the hell did that come from?" And the guy said, "That was sent over by the tank destroyers. They were trying to sleep." Oh. And he said, "The next one that shoots one of the machine guns off, he says, the shell's going to go right in the middle of you."
Oh my goodness.
These are our guys.
Sure.
And they had 90 millimeters guns, and they were as to say, everything was fought at night.
Yes.
And so this was like in the morning, guys were out there with a machine gun, trying to, thought it was funny to fire those machine guns. Well, it wasn't funny to these guys.
Not funny at all. Wrong thing to do.
Oh, they told them, they fired a shell over it. They said the next one's coming over right in the middle of you.
I'm sure, and that was not friendly fire.
That was very unfriendly fire.
Unfriendly fire, I should say. Well,
Tank destroyer was they were a little crazy anyway. You know, some of these guys are there. You know, and it's see, the tank destroyers come in late.
yes, they'd come in.
I mean, in the war, they came in late. Yeah,
That was a late development.
because they weren't developed until late.
Right. But that must have been an awesome machine too.
Oh,
Because they could blast out anything, couldn't they? That tank
90
destroyer?
millimeter, that thing. It was much more accurate than a 105 howitzer artillery piece. I mean, it's just tank destroyers. You know, they fire level. You know.
Yes.
And, you know, we had 57 millimeters, and the 57 millimeters, unless you hit it just dead on, I mean, you wouldn't crack that the tank.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting your explanation of the difference in the armament of the or the armor of the enemy.
Yeah, M6 and
tanks
M5 Tiger tanks.
Yeah, and also the swerving of the guns.
Yeah,
Couldn't do a
180 degree,
360.
right.
If you got in behind them, then you had an advantage.
Once you knocked the tracks off, they were pretty well sitting.
Isn't that something? How many personnel would they have in those big Panzers?
I would say probably about 6.
Really, that many? Gosh. Now, how many?
Well, maybe they didn't have that many, but then they had the infantry behind them, so
Yeah.
I was supposed to, I guess it would vary, maybe 4, maybe 6.
How many men in our Sherman tank?
Probably 2, maybe 3.
Okay.
Again, not being a tanker, I don't know exactly how they.
Right. Well, now you've broken out of Bastogne. You've broken out of the Ardennes forest. Where were you headed then?
Well, actually, by the time Bastogne was over, let's see, I think Bastogne was over around just right after Christmas.
Yeah, January.
And at that time, I was in the hospital.
That's when you were in the hospital.
And then I'd say by the time I came back up, they were already on their way to the Rhine.
Okay, so
When I came back up and they put me to the 69th, the 69th was already heading for the Rhine.
So you crossed the Rhine with the 69th?
No, I didn't. I was dead before. I mean, I wasn't dead. I was wounded before they crossed. I was wounded probably about I'm guessing about 40 miles from Cologne.
Now, is that when you lost your hand?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
My goodness.
Yeah. The war was. That was February the 19th, and the war was over in April.
Yes. Yeah. Well, so after February the 19th, back in the hospital, that's when they sent you back to Liège?
Well, yeah. Well, when I got wounded, they sent me to Liège, and then they sent me to Chester, England.
To Chester, England. Okay. And how did you get there? Were you flown over, or did you have to go by ship across the channel?
No, they flew me in the
Flew you across
Right.
the channel.
in a C. What's it kind of sound like a Malay? 46?
Yeah.
Yeah. C-46.
C-46.
Yeah. And, 2-engine job.
Right.
Well, when I came home, which was kind of unusual, I came home in a DC-3 or DC-6. I can't remember I don't know the names of them. But on that particular plane, we had 27 amputees.
My goodness.
Leg amputees.
Leg amputees.
And me.
And you were the only arm amputee.
I was the only guy. I could do anything. I mean, I had to bring stuff over to them, and they'd open it up or whatever it is, And but when we landed at LaGuardia, the red carpet was laying out,
Oh, yeah.
All the girls from Republic Aviation were there. The bands were playing, and only TA walked off the plane.
How about that?
And then the Lizards came later, but I was the first guy off the plane.
Did you get hugged?
Oh yeah, it was fabulous, you know.
I bet
you know, say when you come home, the bands aren't playing, and but they were playing when I came home.
they were
all
playing for you.
Yeah.
I bet you felt like kissing the ground.
Oh my gosh!
Oh
yeah.
my goodness!
And then
sakes.
later on, I get shipped to Percy Jones Hospital in Battle Creek. Percy Jones was an infirmary hospital that they changed over to an Army amputee hospital.
I see.
So everybody in Percy Jones was an amputee, either legs or arms.
Right.
I've seen some terrible sights in some of those hospitals in the Army. I've seen guys with their stomach laid open, look like a watermelon. You know. I've seen guys going crazy. You hear guys scream all night.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
My goodness sakes, I should say. Well, tell us, how about any funny incidents that happened to you?
Well, there's one guy, the truck driver, on who was pulling our 57 millimeter guns.
Yeah.
We said, here comes the tank. We heard the tanks coming, you know, and we wanted to get in a better position because the way it was, we were right in the middle of the road. So they said, we've got to move about 4 miles this way. And so anyway, the driver, he jumped in the truck. And by the time we got to our destination, we looked at him and we had combat boots. He had the left boot on the right foot and right boot on the left foot.
Oh, my God.
Laced up.
Laced up.
Laced up. He had had the wrong foot on the wrong shoe. And
oh, my goodness sakes. Poor guy.
and then later on, at night we have, you know, you had to talk quietly, you know, so
right.
He'd be in the daytime.
Just couldn't.
Couldn't, yeah.
Couldn't
in a way, it's kind of humorous. In a way, it's kind of. But he had the wrong shoe laced up on the wrong foot.
How about that?
I'm trying to think of some of the other.
Yeah. How about some of your comrades from different parts of the country?
Well, as I say, the big guy with
Sense
the
of
big
humor.
butt. The big guy with a big butt was from New York. I kicked him through the thing. I don't know. I guess it was some funny things. I don't know. But I don't remember that many.
Well, you know, the great thing about you, Tom, is, and I know this about you, and your great Irish heritage, and your wonderful Irish blue eyes, and your good sense of humor, and your sense of fun and everything. And of course, you're related to the Guilfoyles and the Clooneys. Yeah. I
always have a pretty good time when I go out, you know.
I'll bet you do.
Yeah.
I'll bet you and Nick can have a great time together.
We have every once in a while we go over to Hofbrau House over across the river.
Sure.
And,
right.
And I'm not, I don't know, but I'm 83, but I'm over associating with girls in their 30s and 40s.
Sure.
Yeah? And you know, I'm dancing. Well, I've been widowed since for 13 years. I was married for 48 years.
Okay.
I was married to a very nice little Irish girl. Her name was Joan Broderick. And from the old neighborhood, 3 blocks from me, but never laid eyes on the girl until I came out of the Army.
How about that?
And I had 48 wonderful years. I've got 9 grandkids, 1 daughter. I've got 5 great-grandkids, 3 boys and 2 girls. And, you know, I mean, we just have a lot of family stuff, you know?
Of course. Well, that's been so supportive of you personally.
Yes.
And of course, everybody admires you and for what you've done for our nation and our community and, of course, your family. And I know you're a great Christian and your love of God and everything has meant so much to you.
I'm a good old mackerel snapping Catholic, you know?
Yes, sir. What did you give up for Lent?
I never gave up a hell of a lot. I just, I figured, well, I go to church probably 3-4 times a week, you know, Mass.
Sure.
And I figured that and
that's good enough.
And then I didn't want to give up the old crow.
Oh no, never give up the old crow.
Because I like the 2 Manhattans before dinner, and maybe a couple of beers after. You know.
That's very, very, very nice.
Sort of my routine.
Well, I know that you have a wonderful life. I also know that you're a fine tennis player.
Oh, no,
I've heard about that.
is that right? Well, I'm adequate. I would say I'm adequate. I got a good serve. I got a good backhand. I've got forehand's a little iffy, and I do have a transmission problem. I know these feet are supposed to be over there.
Yeah. Well, we all have that problem when we get into our 80s.
And by the time I discovered I'm supposed to be over there, the ball's heading that way.
Late. I know you want to say sometimes, hey, hit the ball to me.
But I do love tennis. I've been playing tennis since '75.
Yeah, it's a great game. Great game.
And then I had a chance. I've done a lot of things. I ran for Congress in 1966.
Yes.
I ran for the state legislature in '74, and I ran for county commissioner in 1980. I might got beat all 3 times, but I kept it close on the state rep job. That's my neighborhood where I live.
Well, see, this is the interesting thing that people should know about you. Not only your war service, and you're growing up as a youngster in East Price Hill and Elder High, and so forth, but your dedication to your community, your country, your civic attitude, and we who know you admire you for that also.
I was very happy to get the inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Yes, and I was happy to be I was in the audience when you got that last November. I was very happy to be there. And by the way, when you see Nick Clooney, tell him you saw old Ted Gardner.
I will. I'll see. I'm going to see him Monday when we hit George is going to be have a world premiere of Leatherheads.
Yes, I'm looking forward to seeing that
Clooney.
show.
And so we're going to be in Maysville. I'm going to take my daughter up with me.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
She's a mother of 9 kids. You know.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, 9 kids.
8 boys.
8. Oh my goodness.
And 1 girl. She was an only child. She said, "I'm not going to have an only child."
Oh my goodness sakes!
Yes, she's got 8 boys. You'll get the oldest one is 36, and the youngest is 19.
Now, how old is your oldest child?
My daughter is 56.
Okay.
And her oldest is like 36, and
isn't that something?
And the youngest is 19.
That's
and I got 1 granddaughter, 8 grandsons and 1 granddaughter. Well, being I'm widowed for 13 years now.
Yes.
I'm back on the dating scene for a little bit, and my granddaughter, who lives down the street from me, where I live. Well, she says she'll call me up and she say, "I called you at 6:30. Where were you?" I said, "Well, I don't know." He says, "As I called you up at 7:30. Where were you?" I said, "Well, I don't know. I can't remember exactly why." She says, "I know where you were." I said, "Where?" He said, "That was one of them losers." I said, "What?"
Oh, that.
She's 32. Looks like 17, and it's a complete domineering woman.
A motherly type. Well, she's
a beautiful girl, but she's
you can't get out from under that.
I'll tell you. And I got 1 grandson that lives with me still.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fun.
He's 23, going on 15.
Oh my gosh.
I go in his room and I said, I bet you can't name 3 disasters. What do you mean? I said, well, there's Hiroshima, Nagasaki, and your room.
Does he go to Elder High?
No, he went to LaSalle.
LaSalle. Okay.
He's graduated. He's 23. He's 23 going on 15. He's 23, but you know. And I opened the door and I said, "By the way, did anybody get hurt in that wreck?" And I'll close the door, you know.
Yeah, right. Well, Tom, this has just been such a great treat, and I've looked forward to having the honor of interviewing you. And as I say, if you mentioned Ted Gardner to your cousin Nick, I think he might remember me.
I'm sure he
we've
would.
been together several times, and we've been up to Nick and Nina's place there in Augusta, to the party house, and so forth. And
the one on the river.
Yeah, one right on the river. And it's just been such an honor. And Nick is a part of our Hornet group that meets the first Friday of every month over at Perkins Pancakes. And we have a good time together. And it's been an honor to be with you, to know you, to see you inducted into the Ohio Veterans Hall of Fame. God bless you, and thank you again.